One, it's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Baltimore. The sun is out. I'm Jay. Thank you for coming into the Ono's Coffee channel to our morning live stream here in the Coffee Q&A. And we do it a little bit of a different time on Saturday mornings sometimes because typically most of our main channel premieres happen at 9 a.m. So we wanted to come here today and talk to you a little bit before the premiere of today's video. And this video today is a little bit special for me because it's something that's actually taken quite a long time to produce. Most of the videos that we do on the channel are relatively simple. Well, I can put them out in a relatively decent amount of time, given enough. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing on the channel, of course, we shoot in other parts of the world, and it takes months sometimes to get to releasing those videos. But we don't actually get to work on those videos for a few months until the release comes out. And then it's maybe a week or two or three to actually edit and assemble the video. And then we can then release it. This one actually took over a year to finally get out. And it's actually part of a trilogy of videos that we've been releasing for about Bedo's Leatherworks. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bedo's, but Bedo's is a company down in Falls Church, Virginia. And I came across Bedo's website, YouTube channel a few years back, and I was like, it's one of those things where you see it and you're like watching it and you're like, this guy is fixing shoes. And I do enjoy shoes. I've always enjoyed shoes and owning them and just seeing, so, progressing from things like Doc Martens when I was younger to Allen Edmonds, and then onward to even nicer pairs of shoes. And, I had this one pair of shoes that I bought from Sears back in like 1995. And they were these work shoes. They were just leather work shoes from Sears. Honestly, they're super cheap work shoes. They were basically $20 back in 1995. A friend of mine who was an iron worker, he was wearing them, and I was like, dude, those are cool shoes. Like, they look like Timberland boots, those tan Timberland with the light tan Timberland boots, but they're cut like shoes without the ankle support. And I was like, that just looks awesome. And so back then I bought it, and over the years I've been wearing them, on different projects and, different construction things we've been doing for the shops. And I would resole them every few years whenever the soles wore out or wore down. And finally it got to the point where the uppers, the body of the shoe had worn so much that it was starting to get holes in the leather. And I was like, oh, or it was really getting creased and really thin. And so I was like, man, I need to get these repaired at some point. And so I had been watching Bedo's channel for a little while by that point. I was like, this guy does incredible work. Incredible. Like, to find this level of craftsmanship is something that just seems so rare in modern times, especially in the United States. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to have these shoes redone by him. And so I brought him down there and met Steve, and it was really nice, and gave him the shoes. This was July of 2019, I think it was, or 2018, something like that. And, we were talking, and he was like, hey, yeah, we'll do these and we'll have them ready by September. All right, very good. That's cool. I don't mind waiting. And so let me just select this. And so he took the shoes and I guess was working on them or whatever. And then, of course, secretly, I'm hoping that there is a video of my shoes being repaired. That would be great, because he was telling me at the time that it's so far gone that it has to be full reconstruction, right? So tear the entire shoe apart, take out the inner lining, and then replace that. New soles, new footbeds, new everything. And I was like, okay, cool. That sounds good. And it's a pretty pricey job at the time. It was like $460. And I was like, oh, that's a little bit. But, I'm spending nearly $500 on a $20 pair of shoes. But the shoes really were that nice. And I had been looking around online, and no other manufacturer was making these type of shoes. So I was like, oh, let's go for it. So we went for it. And February comes by later that year. And I was like, I sent a message, hey, man, what's going on? Then finally another like 6 months goes by, and I'm like, and I sent a message. I was a little bit scathing on. I was like, dude, what's going on there, right? Like, you told me back then, you told me September, and then in February you told me to get back to me. They never did. And you know what? in modern times, we're so used to people trying to justify everything that happens around them or whatever. Gave him the shoes, gave him the money, paid for it, and then I'm just waiting. And so it's like, and I was totally prepared for him to come back with some kind of like answer, but he came back and he was like, you know what, man, you're totally right. I'm sorry, I dropped the ball on this. We're going to take care of this. And I was like, oh, that is a guy who stands up and takes responsibility for whatever has gone wrong. And as I've gotten to know him over the years, I see that by visiting that he's pretty much a one-man shop for the most part. In the videos that we produced, you see another guy that helps him, Noah. Not too long after we shot this video in October of 2021, Noah actually got an opportunity to open his own place in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So he took that opportunity. And then the last time I talked to Steve, he was still a solo act, doing all the shoes himself. And you'll see that when you have craft people such as this, they are a little bit more obsessive. Like myself, we tend to be a little more obsessive about things and want to make sure that it's done to just the right point. So we want to have our hands on it, right? So fast forward a little while later, I think it was July of the next year, he was finished. And so I got the shoes, and he had told me this when we had at the outset that a total reconstruction means that you're going to have to break them in again. And that was like a little bit like, oh man, I'm going to break it in. I mean, these shoes were like, they fit like a glove. They were perfect. They were just so molded to my feet. That was really wonderful. And then the reconstruction, of course, now the shoe is tighter, the leather is tighter, everything's brand new. And it was like, all right, let's try it. And so like it was super tight. So we put it on a stretcher for a couple weeks, came back again, stretch it again. And now we got to the point where I can wear them, and I have been wearing them. Unfortunately, I just don't have any big projects to wear them on where I'm actually in need of work shoes. So I haven't worn them as much. And I do find now that I have to wear really thin socks because it is really a tight fit. But that's not on him. The workmanship is great, and I'm very pleased overall. What really impressed me by him was the fact that he took the responsibility when there was an issue. So many times in industry, in our lives, that when something goes wrong, no one's willing to accept blame, or no one's willing to accept responsibility. And that's really all that and honestly, that's really kind of what I was hoping for, or subconsciously hoping for. That he was like, "Yeah, man, I'm sorry, we totally dropped the ball on that, and we'll take care of that." And I was like, "Oh, wow, I can't express how surprised enough I can't express enough how surprised I am about this." So anyway, as we got to know Steve a little more, I thought he was really interesting, and he enjoys coffee. And I thought, oh, you know what? This would be a great way to combine coffee with my enthusiasm for shoes as well as for what Steve is doing. Like, I think his work is important because it's just so rare in the country now, where we used to have a lot of shoemakers and cobblers. Now there's just really none, and the level of cobbling that Steve does is really at a super high level. Like, it's really some of the best that I've seen. And I'm glad that he's so close, because it's an easy hour or so drive from where I am. And so I called him up one day. I said, "Hey, man," and he was also, and Steve's not only into coffee, not only is he into shoes, he's also into cigars. And I was like, "Well, that sounds like a great time." And so I called him up and I was like, "Hey, man, would you let me come down and shoot at your place for a morning, for all day on a Saturday? And would you have a cigar and let's have an interview?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, come on down." And I was like, "Perfect, that'd be great." And so I got there, kind of close to opening, around 7. We shot all morning. So all the footage and the videos that you've seen, we shot throughout that time. And then after closing, because he closes at 1 on Sundays, we sat down on the front patio with some coffee and a cigar, and we had a smoke and a lengthy discussion. And we shot this in the middle of October. I think it was mid to late October 2021. And it was a relatively started as a relatively cool day, not cold, not chilly necessarily, but cool, like unusually cool. And by the time that we progressed into the afternoon, so we started probably around 1:30 or so in the interview part, and that ran for a couple hours. And by the time that we were at 1 o'clock, the sun had come out because it was overcast in the morning. The sun came out, and then it got hot. It was like 85 degrees, and the way we had the cameras placed was that they were pretty much in sunlight. And the issue that happened was that in direct sunlight, the cameras just overheat, especially at 80 degrees. And I didn't, because it was a cold day normally, October, and because it was overcast, I didn't bring any kind of camera cover. So there's no way to cover and shield the cameras from the heat and the sunlight. So the cameras would shut down, and they shut down a few times. And then we had an issue where I guess I must have bumped the other one of the cameras, and that got slightly out of focus. So in the video, you'll see there's a segment where the camera shot is just a little bit out of focus. That's what happened there. And then the problem is that when the camera shuts down, it stops recording. And I didn't know. It's hard to catch that sometimes. And so you're talking, and we're talking and talking. Luckily, we're recording these on lavalier mics that have record features, so we have redundancy and backup for the audio part. So there are segments that it's only audio and no video, but we were able to keep the entire audio of the interview so that any kind of section that I wanted to use would be available. But so we created 3 videos out of that. The first one, of course, was the Armenian coffee at Bedo's Leatherworks. This one. And this one is the first video. So it's about how to make Armenian coffee. And Steve shows us, step by step, how he makes his country style of coffee. And, it was really a fun time. Let's just click through this a little bit so you can catch that. I've got the links to the other parts of the trilogy here down below, as well as the link to the premiere that's happening in about 17 minutes. And that's what we're talking about. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the upcoming premiere of the Bedo's Leatherworks trilogy's final installment. This is from the first installment. And, so there's a little bit of, this first video is really about us making coffee, talking about Armenian style coffee. Now, there is a bit of a history. You look at this and you're thinking, oh, it looks kind of like Turkish coffee. Well, there is a bit of history between the two peoples, and it's not very pleasant. And so there's definitely a desire for separation. And, I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anything about the Armenian genocide of 1915 until I started this series and listening to Steve's stories about his family's history with that, with both the genocide and the later civil war in Lebanon. And it's just a really interesting, I guess that's the best way to say it, history. But I think that in this third installment, I hope we've captured and given good respect to that. And so the second video here is called Coffee, Cigars, and Lawn Care. And basically us talking on the front patio, drinking coffee, enjoying a cigar, and just talking about what's going on in the world, things in lawn care and how he's been doing things. And that's just kind of a little bit lighter, a little bit fun video. And then finally, our last installment, the one that comes out today, is a little bit on the heavier side, right? It's called a family, an immigrant family. And it really kind of like, this was something that just kind of evolved naturally out of the shoot. A lot of times when I go do these videos, I don't really know necessarily which way we're going or what we're going to be doing in the videos. A lot of times I'm shooting, trying to get as much coverage as possible, and then looking to develop a narrative out of it later. And so that's kind of what happened with this, especially for this third episode. I found what Steve had to say about his family's experience be so, I thought, interesting and compelling that I wanted to to preserve that in this video. And so it took a while. So I did a basic edit back about a year ago in February 2022. And I just kind of got stuck. That's really what happened. I got stuck with it, that I didn't know which way to go with it. And I was just like going back and forth, trying to figure out which way do we go with this story? Well, what do we need to input in here? Do I need to do some reshoots or something? And it's one of those things where like you just feel like it's not working. It's just not clicking. It's not going anywhere that you want it to go. And and maybe it sounds a little bit hokey, but when it comes to editing, I kind of sometimes I like to let the footage speak for itself. Let it speak to me to let me know where it wants to go. And suddenly we were just at an impasse. And so after a couple weeks of trying to figure out where to go, I decided, let me put this down for a moment and let me come back to it. And I finally came back to it, gosh, months, 6, 7, 8, 9 months later. And because I was just doing other stuff, between traveling for work or traveling to run, competitions, or even to shoot at those nations, that suddenly it was like, November. And I was like, oh, let me go back to this, because I was like, I know Steve had said to me at one point, he was like, hey man, let me know when you're going to finally release that so we can do some posts about it. And I was like, all right, let me let you know. So I was like, I need to get this done. So I came back to it, and finally I was able to figure out, okay, this with fresh eyes and fresh perspective. I was like, okay, watch the video. And I was like, okay, this is what I don't like. This is what I do like. Let's cut this out. Let's move this around. And I think we came up with something that I'm proud to present, that I hope that it captures a good representation of their history and, the commitment and also the sacrifice. And that's one thing that I think is that we gloss over here in the United States, that, well, we are a nation of immigrants, but most people in America are so far removed from their immigrant side that they don't even know that there was sacrifice that was at hand. And Steve is someone that actually is an immigrant himself. He was, born in Lebanon and came to the United States when he was 11 during the war. And, he watched his father, compromise and sacrifice for their family. And I don't know, I think it's a very poignant thing. One that I find kinship with, because my parents emigrated here in 1968. Which is almost 10 years before Steve and his family came to America. And, there's always, challenges. And, it's something that I think about, would I have at 20 something, moved to a whole nother country, given up everything, given up all of our familiarity and luxury here to go somewhere else that's brand new. And that's difficult. And so I think we forget that is a difficult thing. But anyway, so that's basically today's video. What's going on, Rusty? Nice to see you. Welcome to the show. Hope you're doing well. Rusty's another gentleman that, knows about families who've emigrated from other countries to this one. And yeah, it should be, I think that part of it is, the one part that I do find that I'm very proud about. I think this is a video that, and it's a video that's also very, some of you who come here for the coffee content, there is no coffee content at all in this video. It's very, since it is, I continued it. I'm including it because it is a kind of that trilogy idea, so that there was coffee and cigars, and then now it's the kind of more about the backstory. But I think it's a nice story to tell, and one that I think is important. And I won't give away spoilers about the video, because there are some things that I would talk about now, but I won't say that, otherwise it might give it away. But yeah, so that's pretty much what we're doing today. We're going to be watching this video, and I'll be signing off in time so that everyone can go and check it out for themselves. And if you're watching this in the replay, you can look at the links down below for the Bedo's Part 3 and Immigrant Family, in case you would like to watch it. And of course, if you watch it, let me know what you think. Drop in some comments, and then, if you think it was good, if you think it's bad, should we not deviate on this channel from all from any coffee content? Like, should it always be coffee content and not these kind of like a little bit different type of videos? I'm drinking today a coffee from Ethiopia, the Wonder Worker, and this one was actually roasted by my friends at Sululat Coffee in Saudi Arabia. And the interesting about this coffee, okay, so this coffee that I'm drinking, it's a very floral, delicious, and tasty coffee. It's very lightly roasted. I'll show you the. You can see it's relatively light in color, right? But the thing about this, here's a secret that most people would never really guess. This coffee is now 11 months old. And you know what? It's still drinking really well. And this is the thing, is I think that if you buy really nice quality coffee and you roast it well, like this is a very light, they like very light roasts. So it's lightly roasted, so it doesn't produce the oils that a darker roast would produce. Like even a medium roast over time will start to exude the oils. And I think that could be, signs of potential staling. But this stuff, I won't say that it's the same experience that it was in March of 2022, but it is very good still to enjoy. And why do I still have this? Because they gave me a kilo bag of it, and this is what I've been drinking for myself. So I just pull a little bit out a couple times a week, drink a cup or two a couple times a week, and that's pretty much it. And I wouldn't serve coffee that's typically this old, but for myself to drink, I'm totally pleased with it. And unlike, of course, our best practices, we always tell people, take your coffee and freeze it. This coffee I've never frozen. This coffee's just been it's just been sitting here in its bag. I'm not even rolling it up to like get the air out of it because I'm just like, well, whatever. I'm just going to drink the coffee. But still, it's light. It's it's very aromatic. It's still very fruity, a little bit nice and juicy, more citrusy fruit than it was. Like before, it was definitely more berry fruit. Now it's a little bit more citrus. So it has changed a little bit, but not too bad. Not too bad for 11-month-old coffee that hasn't been necessarily well cared for. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. We are getting ready to sign off soon to go watch our latest premiere video today. And if you're just joining us, this is the video entitled "An Immigrant Family" about Steve Doudaklian from Bedo's Leatherworks. And if you're not familiar with Steve, he's got a channel here on YouTube called Bedo's Leatherworks, and it's a great channel. They do great work. And here's the thing. So Steve, when I met him, he was like, I just kind of like use my iPhone. And when I first met him, he had just passed 100,000 subscribers. I was like, whoa! I met a guy that has 100,000 subscribers. That's amazing. And then later he reached 136,000. I was like, whoa, dude, that's amazing. I don't even know what that's like. I wonder, like, I hope to find out what that's like one day. But we were, but he's got a great channel, and he shoots with his iPhone mainly. And I was like, dude, you just iPhone it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, it is really one of those within the YouTube world, of YouTube creator world. There's always a lot of talk about, you can just use whatever you have. You don't need to buy fancy cameras. And it's true, you don't. And Steve's a great example that you don't need fancy cameras. You just need your phone. And the great thing about Steve is that it's not fancy cameras, it's not fancy editing. He's just basically there setting up his phone on a shelf. Well, at least at one point it was on a shelf, and just shooting and like just talking and being himself. And it's really what I found to be rather enjoyable by watching his videos. That here's just a dude doing his craft at a very high level, and just very, very casual and calm and very enjoyable to watch. But as you can see here, there's quite a lot of videos. So he's got the motorcycle. So he does all kinds of things, motorcycle jackets. And this one, like this is an interesting video. I just watched this the other day. And this customer of his had a Chanel bag, right? Really pretty, pink. What do they call the quilted bag? And the woman had it for years and had been using it very regularly. It was really worn, and they went through this whole process of like, and this is an interesting video to watch, I think. And he goes through the reconstruction of this bag, but some of it's so trash that he decides that, okay, he talks to his client and he's like, okay, they decide, okay, that'll be fine. Let us redo the leather, like use new leather for the shell. And so basically he crafts this entire bag by hand, by himself, from all new material. And now there's still a lot of the original, all the hardware is original, the interior lining, a lot of that is still original. But most of the bag has now been replaced. And he made a mention in the video that, there's a, people are going to complain that it's not the real thing. And, the question is like, I do think that it is a good philosophical question. Is this a legitimate Chanel bag? And for me, it's like, I think about the story about George Washington's hatchet, right? And they say that over the years, George Washington's hatchet has had the handle replaced 3 times and the actual hatchet, the metal part, replaced twice. Now, is that still George Washington's hatchet? Evidently it is, because they still, say that it is. So I think that's an interesting question. It's like, but this bag, I mean, it's beautiful. It's really just superbly done. But it still has original hardware. It still has original liner. I mean, it's still essentially an original bag, and especially since they've taken that leather that was the original bag is trashed, and that's been either they've discarded or returned to the client. That bag that old shell no longer exists. So this takes that place. So to me, yeah, I would still consider it a Chanel bag. It's still a Chanel bag. It's kind of like, this. Oh, here's another. I think this one here, Dr. Martin's boots. This is another good philosophical question. It's like, if you're familiar with Dr. Martin's boots, they have particular soles, airwear soles that are like chambered for greater softness. To me, that is what makes Doc Martens Doc Martens. Not just the uppers, the way they look, but also that sole. And so when you repair them and you replace the sole with anything else, so I've seen it done with leather, I've seen it done with Vibram soles. That's where the philosophical question comes to me. It's like, is the Dr. Martens without the airwear soles, are they still Dr. Martens? Those are questions for everyone to ponder for themselves, I guess. That's the way to put it. All right, so we're getting up to 8. It's now 8:57. The video is going to premiere in about 3 minutes. So let me sign off now, and thanks very much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time this morning. Good to see all of you. If you're watching the replay, thank you very much, and I hope you'll watch the main channel's video, the premiere that happens in a couple minutes. And let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you think about that video. And yeah. All right. So let me sign off now and then catch you in the premiere. All right. Have a good one.